All right, I'll do that. Here, ready? He gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change. That's deeply anti-free speech. He arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. He did not pardon Assange. He did not pardon Snowden. He did not pardon Daniel Hale. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. to deploy our own troops against George Floyd protesters. These are all things that are actually on the record, things he actually did. And the thing that I find incredibly frustrating is that nobody talks about it. Trump magically gets a pass for things he actually did.
When the establishment media talks about free speech, they love to pretend Donald Trump is some kind of anti-censorship hero standing up to corporate media overreach. But when you look at the actual paper trail, when you look at the real legal indictments, executive actions, and suppressive orders carried out during his presidency, the narrative completely collapses. In a heated panel debate on Piers Morgan Uncensored, Piers tried to run the standard playbook, downplaying Trump's anti-free speech threats as mere hip-shooting rhetoric while accusing the left of hysteria. But political commentator Kyle Kulinski didn't take the bait. Instead of relying on vibes or partisan talking points, Kyle brought hard, verifiable receipts directly to the table, specifically pointing to the time the Trump administration actually arrested and brought felony rioting charges against 6 working journalists for simply covering an Inauguration Day protest. Piers had no real counterpunch. Because when the receipts are real, the elite narrative falls apart every single time. Hit that subscribe button right now to support independent, receipt-based commentary that holds both sides accountable. I'm Neel. This is The Honest Perspective. Truth over access, always. Let's get into it.
Uncensored debut, the host of the Kyle Kulinski show, Kyle Kulinski. Well, Kyle, welcome to Uncensored. We're trying to get you for a long time. Let's have a little chat with you before we get reaction from the panel. But why did the Democrats blow it so badly, and what do they do to avoid this happening again in 4 years?
I mean, the simple answer is that Kamala Harris kind of codes as a technocratic status quo manager, and Trump codes as a change agent. And so, I mean, to sum it up as simply as possible, voters just thought he's going to deliver more change, she's more of the same, and they broke for him.
Who would you like to see run the party now? I mean, what's the future of the Democrats looking like to you?
Jon Stewart. I've been pushing that since the day Trump won this time around, because what we need is, honestly, a controversial, charismatic celebrity might make all of the difference, but it's that mixed with Bernie Sanders' policies of actually delivering social democracy for people, raising their pay, getting them health care. I think that's the magic stew. And honestly, I think it's a shame that more people aren't talking about the controversial, charismatic celebrity portion of Trump being so successful, is that you can't keep the cameras off him. He's entertaining. Love him or hate him, you can't stop watching him. And so we need to sort of mirror that on the left. And I think the way of doing that is Jon Stewart.
But I would add to that what Bill Maher's been warning for a long time to liberals, speaking as a liberal himself. And I'm pretty much where he is politically, I think. I feel the same way. And I know you've been keen to say, look, Kamala didn't mention any of these woke issues or whatever, but she's very much associated with a lot of those woke issues. She's certainly voted in line with a lot of the more progressive stuff, like allowing transgender athletes in women's sport and so on. So she's seen to be a progressive who then moved rapidly to the centre when she got the nomination, and it was all too much of a screech for people, probably on both sides. But this whole woke ideology, I don't mean the original woke ideology of raising awareness for racial and social injustice. I mean the way it's become a kind of new form of fascism, where the far left just basically want to cancel, shame, and humiliate absolutely anybody who disagrees with them about anything. Do you accept that that has become a problem, a stick to beat the party with, which actually really damages them electorally?
No, I think Kamala ran basically the platonic ideal of a non-woke Democratic campaign. She never mentioned race. She never mentioned gender. She never mentioned trans people. She never mentioned pronouns or Latinx or cancel culture. She repeatedly stressed that she was going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the issue of the border. She talked about owning a gun. She ran on freedom and patriotism. And so when you put all that stuff together, I simply don't know what people are talking about when they say she's
they're talking about her record.
Those things at all.
Hang on. They're talking about her record as vice president of the Biden administration, where they never stopped talking about this stuff for nearly 4 years. So you could pretend when you get the nomination, whoa, I'm a centrist and I'm a gun-toting Rambo, by the way, as well, to all you Second Amendment people. But actually, if you judge her on what she said and did in 4 years, she was a progressive left person. And to pretend otherwise is to just ignore what went on in that period.
Notice what Piers Morgan is doing here. He's setting up the classic corporate media trap, trying to shift the entire conversation away from actual governance and material policy toward cultural grievances. He wants to talk about wokeism and social media outrage because it's easy fodder. But pay attention to how Kyle resets the battlefield. He doesn't get bogged down in culture war bait. He immediately redirects the focus to actual state power and executive overreach. Say next when you're ready to watch Kyle unleash the receipts.
What I'm much more concerned about is not Democrats being woke or Democrats censoring speech. I'm much more concerned about Trump's record on those things. So, for example, Trump said he wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail. That's against the First Amendment. He sued CNN for $475 million for calling election denialism the big lie. Before he was president, he sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. He said he wants to open up the libel laws. He called for jailing journalists who report on the Supreme Court abortion ruling early before the decision.
How many of those things did he do in his first term?
Pro-Palestine protesters.
How many of those things did he actually do in his first term? Because it seems to me another problem, and he does this brilliantly, by the way, with the left. He sucks you in because he just shoots them a hip and he says stuff that crosses his mind or whatever. And rather than pick him off on stuff he actually does, you all go completely nuts every time he opens his mouth and says something a bit crazy. And if I was advising the Democrats, I'd be like, stop doing this. You're literally playing into his trap every time you do this. Just pick him off on the stuff he actually does. Then you got a better chance.
All right, I'll do that. Here, ready? He gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change. That's deeply anti-free speech. He arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. He did not pardon Assange. He did not pardon Snowden. He did not pardon Daniel Hale. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. to deploy our own troops against George Floyd protesters. These are all things that are actually on the record, things he actually did. And the thing that I find incredibly frustrating is that nobody talks about it. Trump magically gets a pass for things he actually did.
He doesn't get
Democrats
a pass.
Get held to a super high standard.
Come on, he doesn't get a pass.
How many times have you heard people say those things I just told you?
Trump has had...
Wait.
Hang on. Let me answer you. Trump has
that?
had the most unrelentingly hostile media from a mainstream media that is largely staffed by liberals. We know this because of the way they all go nuts when their paper wouldn't come out and endorse Kamala and they all resign, so they reveal their true colours. Cable news the same, MSNBC, CNN, you can fire a harpoon around their newsrooms and you wouldn't hit a conservative, right? So let's just get real about the way mainstream media is made up. I've worked in it, and there are very few conservatives, and that is part of the problem as well. And I just think that ultimately, if the Democrats are going to try and make themselves electable, they've got to move wholesale on now to a far more effective way of campaigning. And it can't just be every time Donald Trump speaks, mass hysteria, shaving your head, going on TikTok and posting videos of yourself screaming and saying you'll never have sex with a Trump supporter again. All this stuff is insane.
How about just telling the truth? Wait. How about just telling the truth? That's a radical idea, right? When was the last time you heard that Trump arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting? Who talked about that? Did CNN talk about that? Did MSNBC talk about that? Did you talk about that? Nobody talks about it. And the fact of the matter is Trump attacks Democrats 4 times as hard as they attack him.
Yeah.
So if anything, the lesson to take away is the opposite. Democrats should get more arrogant, they should get more aggressive, and they should tell the truth more.
Come on, Kyle. You know that would be utter suicide.
No, that's the truth.
You know what? You wouldn't be as good at it as he is, because he does it with humor. You lot all do it with these incredibly straight-faced, virtue-signaling, I'm outraged by absolutely everything faces. And it's like, if you all just chilled out a bit, have a bit of Kool-Aid,
No.
Have a bit of a laugh.
That's why I said Jon Stewart.
Death by mockery. Well, actually, you're right. Jon Stewart gets exactly the right tone. On that, I agree with you.
That's right.
That moment right there is why independent media exists, and why elite interviewers like Piers Morgan get so flustered when they run up against real facts. Notice how Piers instinctively tried to deflect Kyle's points by claiming Trump just shoots from the hip, or that the mainstream media is too mean to him. But Kyle brought up a specific, historically documented event. The arrest and felony prosecution of 6 journalists during the January 2017 Disrupt J20 protests in Washington, D.C. And let's be crystal clear about the history here, because the record completely backs up Kyle's point. During those Inauguration Day protests, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, under federal jurisdiction, indicted over 200 people under sweeping felony rioting charges. Among those indicted were working journalists, including photojournalists Evan Engel and Alex Rubinstein, as well as reporter Aaron Cantu. These reporters were facing up to 70 years in prison simply for standing on a public street with cameras and press credentials, doing their jobs and documenting state power. It took a massive, multi-year civil liberties legal defense campaign for those bogus charges to finally be dropped or dismissed by judges due to a total lack of evidence that these reporters engaged in any unlawful acts. When corporate commentators framed Trump as a defender of free speech while ignoring his administration's actual record, from threatening to strip broadcast licenses from networks that criticize him, to filing multi-million-dollar libel suits against journalists, to placing gag orders on federal scientific agencies like the EPA, they aren't being objective. They're laundering state authoritarianism as populism. If we want a functional democracy, we cannot allow politicians to post as champions of liberty while actively using federal prosecutors to stifle press freedom. The left doesn't need to engage in hyperbole or cultural hysteria to prove its point. We just need to bring the receipts. If you believe in holding power accountable regardless of party, and if you value real facts over elite media access, hit that subscribe button and join our community here at The Honest Perspective. I'm Neel. Truth over access. People over profits. Live, uncut, and unfiltered. That's The Honest Perspective. And that's where I'll leave you.